Before the echo of stone, the night begins softly. The world feels older here, slower, quieter, as if time itself has chosen to rest. Somewhere beyond the hum of your room, history is still breathing. It moves like wind through dust, like water beneath forgotten bridges. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The heartbeat of stone, the whisper of footsteps long gone.
Every empire, every dream, every silence has left its trace upon the earth.
And tonight, we will follow those traces. Let the noise of the present fade. The screen, the light, the constant rush, all of it can wait. The past does not demand attention, it only asks for stillness. In that stillness, the shapes of other worlds begin to return, a flicker of torchlight against marble, a distant call of metal striking metal,
The scent of oil, of dust, of something vast and human. You are not watching history now, you are drifting inside it.
Our journey will not hurry. It moves with the rhythm of centuries, slow and unbroken. We will walk beneath the arches of Rome, where sunlight spills across the Colosseum's curved walls. We will stand in the narrow streets of the Middle Ages, where the air tastes of wood smoke and bread.
We will rest among feasts, listen to the laughter of kings and servants alike, and watch the candles sink into wax.
And before the night ends, we will meet an empress, Faustina the Younger, whose grace outlived her years, whose silence shaped an empire's memory. There are no lessons to learn here, no judgments to make. Only the quiet observation of life as it was, raw, unhurried, and endlessly human. So, breathe deeply. Let the weight of history settle like dust upon your mind. And as the world outside fades, imagine the first light of dawn spilling over ancient Rome. The day begins again, slowly. Part 1. Life in the Roman Colosseum. The morning of Rome. The story begins in ancient Rome, beneath a pale and patient sunrise. The city is still half asleep, wrapped in a soft haze of smoke and dust. From a distant hill, the light touches rooftops made of clay and tile. It slides slowly over domes, courtyards, and columns, awakening the marble with a faint, golden warmth. A Roman citizen rises with the dawn. He does not rush. He moves with the rhythm of the city, deliberate, unhurried, steady.
The air smells of baking bread and damp stone.
Somewhere, a fountain murmurs, its water older than the city itself.
From narrow streets, the sound of sandals brushing against the ground begins. Quiet at first, then joined by the hollow thud of wooden carts.
He adjusts his wool cloak and steps out into the morning. The light catches the edges of his tunic, turns the dust around his feet into a soft shimmer. He walks toward the Colosseum, that vast monument of stone and sound. It rises ahead like the skeleton of a sleeping giant, arches stacked upon arches, holding both beauty and weight. The stones still hold the chill of night. He reaches out and runs his hand along them, feeling the roughness that centuries will later smooth away. The city stirs gently. Vendors begin to open their stalls, their voices low, almost polite. A potter lifts the wooden shutter of his shop. A boy carries a bundle of olives down the street. The smell of smoke mixes with the sweetness of pressed grapes.
The hum of Rome is not a noise. It is a pulse.
Even in its stillness, the city seems alive, breathing through stone and shadow. As he walks, he passes walls covered in faded paint, images of heroes, ships, and gods now softened by time. The colors, once bright as blood, are pale now, worn by dust and light.
He does not stop to read them. He has seen them all his life.
They belong to the background of existence, like the sound of footsteps or the slow tolling of a bell. The path widens near the forum. Columns stand in perfect rows, their bases dark with age. Between them, traders arrange baskets of figs, dates, and bread. Voices mingle like wind through reeds, a slow, low murmur that fills the open space. Nothing here feels hurried. Every movement, every gesture seems measured against the patience of the sun. Beyond the market, the Colosseum waits.
Its arches open like mouths, ready to swallow the sound of the day.
It is neither cruel nor kind. It simply exists as mountains do, as rivers do. To the man, it is not a spectacle, it is part of the rhythm of living. He has seen its gates every morning, the way one might see the sea, endless, inevitable, quietly magnificent. He stops by a small stall near the outer wall. The vendor sells cups of warm wine, watered down and scented with herbs. They nod to each other without speaking. Coins pass from one hand to another. The man drinks slowly, letting the liquid chase away the night chill. From somewhere inside the amphitheater, the faint echo of tools against stone rings out. Workers preparing seats, clearing sand, arranging ropes. It is the sound of another day beginning.
A gentle wind drifts through the archways.
It carries the scent of metal, sweat, and dust, mixed with something older. The memory of thousands of mornings just like this one. The man closes his eyes for a moment and listens. The sound is not of violence, not of crowds, but of structure and endurance. The hum of preparation, the breath before movement. The sun rises higher, shadows shorten along the ground. From the hilltops, the marble temples catch the light and send it rippling across the city. Pigeons settle on the statues, their wings beating softly against the calm. Everywhere, water flows, through fountains, aqueducts, gutters, silver lines threading through stone. Rome breathes through its water. It hums through its streets, it endures. The man walks along the outer curve of the Colosseum, tracing the shape of its shadow. Each archway frames a piece of sky. Each stone bears the mark of a mason long forgotten. Inside, the air is cooler. Light falls in slanted beams, catching dust that dances lazily in the stillness. The arena is empty now. Only sand, silence, and the faint whisper of the wind. He stands at the edge and looks out.
Not with excitement, not with fear, but with quiet recognition.
This is his Rome. Not the Rome of emperors or battles, but of ordinary mornings. Of bread and wine, stone and air, of the patient repetition of days that build a life without announcing it. Far away, the Tiber moves slowly beneath its bridges. Its surface glints under the sun like a sheet of glass. Fishermen mend their nets. Women wash linen at the banks.
Children chase each other through the reeds.
The river carries everything, sound, scent, memory, toward the sea. As the city awakens fully, the man turns back toward his home. The streets are busier now, filled with carts and voices. The scent of roasting grain drifts from the bakeries. Somewhere a lyre begins to play, a slow melody, thin and wandering. It weaves through the noise like a thread of calm. The man walks through it all, through sunlight, shadow, and sound, until the noise becomes distant again, folded into the hum of the day. For Rome, like all great cities, is not made of power or marble alone. It is made of breath, of quiet footsteps, of mornings that arrive gently, without fanfare, and pass unnoticed into history. And so, beneath that pale and ancient sky, the world continues. Softly, steadily, as though time itself were taking a slow, deliberate breath. The slow heart of the arena. The arena fills with slow-moving crowds. From every street, from shaded courtyards and markets, people drift toward the Colosseum. Their sandals press soft patterns into the dust. The murmur of thousands rises like a low tide, filling the air, settling over the stone. Inside, the sunlight pours through the arches, white and heavy. It strikes the marble seats, turns them pale as bone. Shadows shift across the tiers, sliding gently from row to row as the morning deepens. The air is warm now, scented faintly with oil, sweat, and the dry sweetness of sand. There are no jokes here, no laughter,
Only quiet observation.
the touch of a hand against warm stone, the crack of wood as a bench settles beneath its weight. The faint, rhythmic hum of anticipation. People speak softly, short words, murmured greetings, small comments on the heat, the light, the dust that settles on their clothes. In the center, the arena waits. Its floor is smooth and pale, brushed clean for the day. Beneath it, hidden corridors hold the machinery of spectacle, gates, pulleys, cages, darkness.
But from above, all appears calm.
A broad circle of sand beneath a wide Roman sky. The hum of the crowd fades to a slow, collective breath. Time stretches, trumpets sound, not bright, but distant, dull with age. Their echo rolls along the upper walls, carried away by the wind. A line of guards enters, bronze catching the sun in small glints. They move with steady rhythm, neither proud nor hurried. Each footstep lands with the same weight. Each turn is measured, practiced. The crowd watches without noise.
The day begins.
From the shaded gate, a group of prisoners is led into the light. Their movements are slow, almost gentle, as if walking through water. They do not shout or struggle. They simply move one step, then another. The crowd exhales together, not in cruelty, but in attention. This is the first act, the rhythm's opening note. The execution is simple, efficient. No one speaks, the air thickens, then clears. A flock of birds circles above, their wings flashing against the sky. The sand darkens briefly, then returns to silence. Time continues. From another gate, the beast keepers appear. They guide the animals carefully. Lions, bears, leopards, each one emerging like a shadow pulled into sunlight. Chains clink softly. The handlers' faces are calm, focused on the slow discipline of their task. The beasts move with uncertain grace, their eyes reflecting the brightness of day. The crowd watches. Children lean forward, old men rest their chins on their hands. The sound is no longer a roar, but a hum. The sound of breathing shared by thousands.
The hunt begins without signal.
A door opens, a man runs, sand rises then falls. The animals move, slow at first, then faster. The pattern unfolds. A chase, a turn, a fall, the stillness that follows. Each motion blends into the next. Dust curls upward, glowing gold in the sunlight. When it ends, the wind crosses the arena, clearing the air again. The audience exhales as one. The hum returns. Between each act, there is waiting. Workers rake the sand smooth, gathering the remains of motion. They move in quiet lines, bent against the light. Their wooden tools scrape softly, a sound like whispers against fabric. Spectators eat small loaves of bread, drink watered wine, shade their faces with folds of linen. Some close their eyes. For a moment, the arena feels like a great open courtyard, drowsy and harmless beneath the sun. Then, another trumpet. The tone changes. From the northern gate, the gladiators emerge. They walk in pairs, their armor catching the light in scattered reflections, bronze, leather, and steel. Worn, not polished. They carry their helmets under their arms. Their faces are ordinary, unmarked by drama.
They do not wave nor raise their weapons.
They simply walk to the center, to the place where sand meets shadow. The crowd does not cheer. It murmurs softly, the way people murmur at the turning of a page. This is what they came for, though few would say why. The sight, the sound, the rhythm, all familiar, all strangely soothing. A signal is given, a slow lift of a hand, a pause, a drop. The first pair begins. Not a clash, not an explosion, but a measured sequence of movements. The ring of metal against metal drifts upward, soft, almost musical. They circle, step, strike, step again. The sound of their breathing mixes with the murmur of the crowd. The rhythm builds, then falls, then builds again. Each impact is a note. Each pause, a rest. Minutes stretch into long, quiet intervals. The sun lowers slightly, touching the upper arches with gold. Sweat glints on armor, dust gathers on the edges of shields. The crowd watches in stillness, thousands of eyes following the same slow dance. It is not excitement, it is attention, the kind that empties the mind, that leaves only sound and motion. When the final blow comes, it is gentle.
A body falls softly onto sand.
No cry, no shout, only the sound of air leaving the lungs and the faint brush of sand moving beneath the weight. The victor stands motionless, then lowers his weapon. The crowd releases its breath. The trumpets sound again, low, distant, like thunder rolled beneath the earth. The day moves forward.
More pairs enter, more movements unfold.
The pattern repeats, not as spectacle, but as a kind of ritual of endurance. Each man a reflection of the other, each action blending into the long rhythm of the afternoon. The audience no longer reacts. They sit beneath the heat, their bodies still, their minds drifting somewhere between wakefulness and dream. Above them, the sky shifts from pale blue to soft amber. Shadows climb the stone walls, reach the upper tiers, rest across faces grown calm with fatigue. Vendors move through the aisles, their voices low, carrying baskets of fruit and water. Coins change hands. A boy spills wine on his tunic. His mother wipes it away without a word. All continues, quietly, naturally, as if the day has forgotten how to end. At last, the final trumpet sounds. The crowd begins to rise, their motions slow, collective. Sandals scrape, benches creak, the hum grows again, not loud, but full. People move toward the exits, their shadows stretching across the stairs. The air cools as the sun lowers beyond the arches. Birds return to the upper ledges. The workers begin to sweep, collecting what remains of the day, broken wood, scattered sand, the faint echo of applause that never quite became applause. The man from the morning stands once more by the outer wall. The light touches his face, soft and fading. He watches as the crowd flows out into the streets, a river of quiet bodies, each carrying the day's dust on their feet. No one speaks. The city receives them again, folding them back into its endless breath. Far above, the sky deepens. The first stars appear. Small, patient, ancient. The Colosseum rests in their light, vast and unmoving. Its arches hold the day's silence like water in a stone basin. Inside, the sand cools. The wind drifts through, gentle and unhurried. Rome sleeps, and in that sleep, it endures. No spectacle, only endurance. By sunset, the sand is smooth again, and the city exhales. Rome returns to silence. The crowds drift away, their footsteps fading down long stone corridors. The air grows cooler, touched by the faint salt of the distant sea. Torches flicker along the outer arches of the Colosseum, their flames bending in the soft wind. Workers sweep the last traces of the day into piles, moving slowly, their shadows long and thin across the sand. The arena breathes like a sleeping creature, its vast ribs of marble dim under the falling light. Beyond the walls, the streets are narrow, filled with the hum of the returning crowd. Sandals brushing against cobblestone, the creak of wooden wheels, the slow rhythm of the city finding its evening pace. The man from the morning walks among them, his cloak pulled close against the coming chill. The smell of smoke drifts through the air, mixed with the sweetness of roasted grain and wine. Lanterns begin to appear, small pools of light floating in the dusk. Rome changes color as the sun sinks. Gold to rose, rose to grey, grey to shadow. The Tiber reflects it all, a long ribbon of light slipping between the bridges, carrying the day's memory downstream. Along the riverbanks, fishermen gather their nets. Women rinse the last of the washing, their laughter softened by distance. Dogs wander between the market stalls, searching for scraps. A fruit seller packs his figs into a cloth, humming quietly to himself. Above it all, the city seems to sigh, relieved to have survived another day of heat and dust and noise. From the upper hills, the rooftops glow faintly. Smoke curls from chimneys, rising straight into the cooling sky. Bells sound from distant towers, slow, deliberate, marking the hour. Their echoes roll through the streets, fading as they travel, folding gently into the hum of the night. The man walks past an open courtyard where a small group eats in silence. The scent of garlic and olive oil lingers in the air. A child leans against a wall, half asleep, his head resting on his mother's arm. Nearby, a musician plucks the strings of a lyre, the notes wandering through the air like drifting embers. The sound is simple, unhurried, made for no one and everyone. It fills the space between the voices, between the heartbeats of the city. The man pauses, listening. For a moment, time seems to slow, stretching thin and clear, as if the world has forgotten its own weight. The tune ends, leaving only the quiet buzz of the night. He continues walking. The streets twist and narrow, walls lean inward, almost touching. The light grows dimmer, the air heavier. Somewhere above, a shutter closes with a hollow thud. Somewhere else, water drips steadily from a spout into a basin, marking seconds no one counts. The smell of tallow, iron, and fruit fills the space. He passes a bathhouse where steam rises through open vents, catching the last traces of firelight. Inside, men sit in silence, shoulders gleaming, the water shifting in slow rhythm with their breath. Outside, a cart rattles by, drawn by a tired mule. The driver hums a tune older than the road. Everything moves, but gently, the motion of a city preparing to sleep. The man turns a final corner and steps into a small square. A fountain stands at its center, its water catching the moonlight in broken silver lines. Around it, stray cats stretch, their bodies melting into shadow. He sits on the edge of the stone basin, resting his hands on the cool surface. The water murmurs softly, a voice without language, patient and endless. He looks up. The sky above Rome is vast now, deep and colorless, scattered with stars. The noise of the day is gone, replaced by the low hum of the earth itself, a sound felt more than heard. Across the city, windows glow faintly, each one a small flame in the dark. The streets empty, the markets close, the last voices fade behind wooden doors. Rome exhales once more, long and slow, the way a living thing does when it surrenders to rest. The man rises, his movements heavy but calm. He walks home through the quiet streets, passing statues that watch without eyes, walls that hold centuries of dust and memory. Every step sounds softer than the one before. At his doorway, he pauses. The lamp inside is still burning, its light thin and steady. He enters, closes the door, and the sound of the city disappears behind him like a tide going out. In the distance, the Colosseum sleeps under the moon, its great circle of stone holding the day's breath. The sand within is smooth again, untouched, waiting. The stars above it burn faintly, patient as time itself. Rome dreams, not of conquest or glory, but of continuity, of bread rising in ovens, of water flowing beneath bridges, of footsteps crossing the same streets century after century. The wind moves softly through the ruins and the roofs, whispering through cracks in the walls, tracing every corner of the city's memory. The night deepens, the lamps dim. Part 2. The birth of the medieval guilds. The birth of the medieval guilds. The scene shifts to Europe in the 12th century. Narrow streets echo with the sound of hammers and the smell of smoke. The morning mist clings to rooftops of wood and slate, softening the lines of the town until it seems half-dreamed. From open windows, faint light spills across cobblestones, slick with dew. Somewhere, a forge breathes. Sparks rise and fade in the cold air. Men and women move through the streets, their voices low, their steps sure. They carry baskets of wool, iron, and grain. Each movement is purposeful, unhurried, bound to the rhythm of work that has no beginning and no end. Out of this quiet persistence, the guilds are born. Slow, deliberate, careful. They do not arrive with proclamation or power, but with a murmur of agreement, a shared nod, a rough hand extended in trust. In narrow workshops beneath timbered roofs, craftspeople gather. A candle burns between them. Its flame wavers in the draught, glinting off the curve of a chisel, the rim of a cup, the damp edge of a ledger. The talk is simple. Prices, apprentices, quality, honesty. Each word lands with the weight of survival. Outside, the town wakes fully. Bells toll from the church tower, their sound rolling across the rooftops like slow thunder. The marketplace stirs, carts creaking, animals lowing, the shuffle of feet. Smoke from the blacksmith's fire drifts upward, mixing with the scent of bread and tallow. The air hums with creation. Wood splits, iron bends, Cloth stretches across frames to dry. The whole town seems to move as one slow body, its pulse the steady rhythm of work. Inside a carpenter's hall, sawdust hangs in the air like mist. A young apprentice planes a beam, his hands steady, his eyes focused. The master watches from a distance, silent but attentive. Around them, others work, shaping, joining, sanding. Nothing is wasted, nothing rushed. Every motion is the result of another before it. In the far corner, a man keeps the books, his quill scratching softly against parchment. A seal presses wax. The scent of resin and wood smoke fills the air. It is not just craft, it is ritual. As evening approaches, the workers gather again, not in the marketplace now, but in a small hall lit by oil lamps. They share bread, soup, a little ale. The mood is calm, reflective. A charter lies open on the table, the ink still fresh, the words written in slow, careful Latin. It records an agreement, too. Outside, rain begins to fall, soft at first, then steady. It drums gently against the roof, a sound that blends with the murmur of voices below. A woman sets her spindle aside, a mason folds his plans, a weaver stretches his sore hands and looks toward the door. The fire in the hearth burns low, the logs collapsing inward, sparks vanishing up the chimney. The guild meeting ends as it began, without ceremony, without applause, only the quiet satisfaction of having built something that will outlive its builders. By dawn, the rain has passed, the streets glisten. The town smells of wet earth and wood smoke. Work begins again, just as it always does. The blacksmith hammers iron into shape, the shoemaker stitches leather by lamplight, the baker turns dough into bread that steams in the cold morning air. The rhythm continues, measured, patient, eternal. Each strike of hammer, each cut of blade, each pull of thread echoes the same thought. The work must endure. Years pass and the guilds grow like roots beneath the soil. They shape towns into order, teach trade into art, and turn skill into legacy. Young apprentices arrive barefoot and uncertain. They leave years later with calloused hands and quiet pride. Masters age slowly behind their benches, their tools polished smooth by decades of use. When they die, their names are carved into wood and stone, remembered not for wealth, but for precision. In every workshop, the same truth holds, that craft is not noise or spectacle, but patience made visible. The guilds carry that truth across generations. They become the spine of cities, the silent keepers of quality and tradition. In their halls, time moves differently. Days blur into seasons, seasons into years, and yet the rhythm never breaks. Work, rest, repeat. The sound of hammers, the sigh of saws, the rustle of parchment. As night falls once more, candles burn low in the windows. The air is thick with smoke and warmth. The guild leaders seal another record, an apprentice accepted, a standard renewed, a promise kept. Outside, the streets are empty now. The town sleeps, wrapped in its own steady breath. In the silence, the faint ring of a hammer still lingers, somewhere beyond the dark. It is not glory that defines these centuries, but endurance. Not the crowns of kings, but the hands of those who built the world from wood and stone, fire and patience. Beneath the quiet roofs of Europe, civilization continues to hum, a rhythm of making, mending, and remembering. The guilds breathe within that rhythm, their work endless, their silence full. In every town, beneath the spires and stone arches, there is the steady rhythm of labor, soft, constant, without pride. The guild halls stand at the center, their wooden doors darkened by age, their symbols carved into lintels above the entrance. A hammer, a spindle, a loaf of bread, a ship. Inside, the air smells of ink, beeswax and the faint tang of metal. Tables are lined with ledgers and candles, the light trembling over rough parchment where names and marks are written. It is not wealth they count, but time. Hours worked, years served, the measure of a life spent in craft. Apprentices move quietly through the hall, sweeping sawdust, fetching tools, pouring ale for the older men who meet to discuss trade. Their eyes follow the gestures of the masters, how they hold a blade, how they check the edge of a plank, how they speak little but always look closely. In time, these gestures become their own, learned not through command but through repetition, through the soft imitation of those who came before. Journeymen, in their turn, wander from town to town. They sleep in inns, in barns, in the corners of workshops where strangers become brothers by the sound of the same hammer. They carry small bundles of tools wrapped in linen, tokens from the guilds they have left behind, proof of skill, letters of trust. Each town has its own rhythm, its own scent, iron and smoke in one, wool and dye in another. They travel not for adventure, but for learning, to see how others build, how others endure. Masters grow old in the dim light of their workshops. Their hair turns grey, their hands slower, but their eyes remain sharp. They sit by the window at dusk, the last light falling on the wood grain or the curve of a blade. Around them, apprentices whisper and work. The sound of a plane, the tap of a hammer, the hiss of a quill in ink. These are the voices of the guild. When the master speaks, it is to correct, to remind, to pass on the line between what is well made and what is merely finished. Rules are few, but they are firm. They are not shouted, not written in stone, but kept in memory, spoken softly in the hall when a candle is lit or a seal pressed into wax. Work honestly. Teach what you have learned. Do not betray your craft. Keep the measure true. These rules shape the town more than any law of king or priest. They keep the water clean, the bridges standing, the loaves warm, the tools sharp. As the centuries pass, the guilds weave themselves into every corner of life. They are the pulse beneath the surface, unseen but constant. Markets grow louder, streets more crowded, rulers rise and fall, but the guilds remain quiet and certain. Their strength is not in armies or gold, but in the knowledge carried by calloused hands. And as the centuries drift onward, that rhythm becomes the heartbeat of civilization itself, the sound of the plane against wood, the hammer against anvil, the loom's slow song in the dark. These are the sounds that shape the quiet empire of the guilds, built not on conquest but on craft, built not to dazzle but to endure. The guild halls grow older, their walls darken with smoke, their floors polished by generations of boots. The same benches where apprentices once sat now hold their sons and daughters. Candles burn in the same brass holders, dripping wax over the same carved names. Dust settles on ledgers that record centuries of work, each entry a heartbeat, each seal a promise. The guilds have become something larger than trade. They are memory itself, organized into the rhythm of hands. Outside, Europe changes, wars rise and fade, borders shift, kings die. But within these narrow streets, the work continues. The air still smells of iron and wool and ink. Bells still mark the morning. The craftspeople still gather at dawn. Their words have softened, their clothes changed, but the gestures remain the same. The careful lift of a tool, the quiet nod of approval, the shared silence between those who understand the weight of creation. And when night falls, the city sleeps to the same lullaby it has always known. The fading sound of hammers, the whisper of thread drawn through fabric, the sigh of cooling metal. The guilds, unseen, keep watch. They do not seek glory. They hold the memory of effort, of patience, of human persistence. Somewhere in a quiet workshop, a single candle burns beside a block of unfinished wood. A young craftsman leans forward, carving the curve of a chair leg. Outside, the wind moves softly through the empty streets. The light trembles, the sound of the blade is steady, sure, timeless. When the work is done, he will lay down his tool, wipe the dust from his hands, and step into the cool air of the night. Above him, stars shine through the smoke, the same stars that watched the builders of Rome, the same that will watch the makers of the centuries to come. The guilds are their earthly mirror, patient, luminous, enduring. And beneath that ancient sky, the world continues its quiet labor, unbroken, unhurried, the slow breathing of civilization in its sleep. Time moves forward. Change comes not with revolution, but with slow erosion. The guilds fade, leaving behind order where once there was none. Their symbols remain carved above doorways, but the voices that once filled their halls have grown quiet. Dust gathers where candles once burned, the ledgers close. Outside, the streets widen, and new voices fill the air. Merchants, bankers, travelers, men who measure not with tools, but with numbers. The world begins to shift. Ships grow larger, their sails rising like pale wings against the wind. Roads stretch farther, binding towns to cities, cities to distant coasts. The rhythm of the hammer and anvil softens beneath a new sound, the rustle of parchment, the clink of coins, the steady scratching of quills in counting houses. Trade becomes the pulse of the age. The goods, once crafted in shadowed workshops, now travel in crates across seas. Cloth dyed in Florence is worn in London. Iron from the north is traded for spices from the east. A slow network of exchange spreads like roots beneath the surface of Europe. In the marketplace, voices rise and mingle, languages overlapping, prices shifting with the tide. The merchants stand at the center, calm amid the noise. They are the new architects of the world, though few see it yet. Their tools are balance scales, abacuses, sealed letters carried by messengers through wind and rain. They build no cathedrals, yet they raise invisible towers of trust and debt that stretch across continents. The guilds watch quietly from the edges. Some adapt. Others close their doors, their masters too proud or too weary to follow the tide. A few merge with the new merchant houses, lending their skill where money leads. But most fade into history, their strength dissolved by the slow logic of trade. The world has learned their lesson: order, precision, patience. Now it seeks to apply it not to craft, but to commerce. In the harbour towns, the air smells of salt and tar. Cranes lift heavy cargo. Dockworkers move in endless rhythm, pushing barrels, rolling bales, stacking timber. The sun burns low over the water, turning the sails red and gold. At night, the inns fill with travellers, men from Genoa, Bruges, London, Lisbon. Maps are unrolled, routes are drawn. Voices murmur over ale and candlelight. The conversation is not of kings or wars, but of winds, markets, and ships. The new empire is not built on land, but on trade, winds, and trust. In Florence, a banker closes his ledger and seals a letter with wax. In Venice, a merchant's ship slips into the Adriatic, its hold filled with wool and glass. In Antwerp, a printer sets the type for a contract, the black ink gleaming under the lamplight. Everywhere, movement, exchange, the slow transformation of the old world into something restless and vast. Yet beneath the bustle, something still remains of the old rhythm. The craftspeople still rise early. The smell of wood smoke still drifts through narrow lanes. A potter still shapes clay with quiet care. But now his pots are stamped with the mark of a merchant's house, shipped far from the hands that made them. Creation has become a link in a longer chain, impersonal, efficient, inevitable. The guild halls, once filled with the hum of discussion, now serve as storehouses or meeting places for trade companies. Their walls, carved with symbols of tools and faith, echo faintly when the doors close. A few are kept alive by habit, a candle lit on feast days, a name recited in memory of the founders. But time, steady and patient, wears even the strongest stone thin. The old ways do not vanish in fire, they drift away like dust in sunlight. The merchant class rises as quietly as the guilds once did. They learn to navigate not rivers or roads, but systems, credit, debt, negotiation, risk. They turn patience into profit, foresight into power. Their homes line the main streets, their windows bright with imported glass. Their children learn to read before they learn to work. Letters flow between cities like a bloodstream of ink. Across Europe, new buildings rise, counting houses, stock exchanges, warehouses built near the docks. Bells no longer call workers to guild halls, but ring in ports and marketplaces. The rhythm of the age changes again, faster, lighter, more abstract. The hum of the city is no longer made of hammers and saws, but of footsteps, ledgers, and the distant creak of ships. At dusk, the merchants walk home beneath the same sky the craftsmen once studied. They pass the quiet workshops, the fading signs of the old trades. The smell of metal and sawdust lingers faintly in the air, mixed now with the scent of spice and ink. The city glows with lamplight. Coins pass from hand to hand. Voices rise and fall in the language of numbers.
Time continues its slow work. What was once built by hand is now built by exchange. The guilds, though gone, have left behind their pattern, precision, discipline, structure. The merchants inherit it, reshape it, and carry it forward. The tools change, but the rhythm remains: measure, balance, patience.
And so, as the world drifts into the next age, Europe stands at the edge of something vast and unseen, a network of trade, of knowledge, of restless ambition. The old halls sleep in silence, the new houses glow with light. Between them, the night stretches, calm and endless, filled with the soft sound of wind over water, the slow breathing of history, carrying the world toward its next beginning. The Feasts of the Middle Ages. The Feasts of the Middle Ages. Winter settles across Europe. Candles flicker inside stone halls. People gather around long tables heavy with bread, meat, and wine. The medieval feast is not celebration, but survival. Warmth shared against the cold. The air smells of smoke and roasted meat. Servants move quietly between the benches, their arms full of trenchers, thick slabs of coarse bread used as plates. Steam rises from pots of stew, heavy with onions and roots drawn from the frozen soil. Outside, the wind moves through the bare trees, and the sound of it finds its way through cracks in the walls. But inside, there is noise, the clatter of knives, the low murmur of voices, the steady rhythm of hunger being answered. Feasting was never only about food. It was an act of order, of power, of belonging. Each table told a story. The highest sat nearest the fire. Lords, ladies, and visiting priests. Their dishes were rich, touched with spice from distant lands, cinnamon, saffron, pepper, carried by merchants who crossed oceans and deserts. The lower tables ate plainer fare, barley bread, salt pork, thick pottage. Yet even here, the sharing of warmth and food carried a kind of quiet dignity. In the dim light, faces glowed the same. Wine flowed freely, though not all could afford it. For most, ale was the drink of life, brewed thick and strong, sometimes flavoured with herbs to hide the sourness. Cups passed from hand to hand, a ritual older than memory. It was not drunkenness they sought, but heat, the kind that spreads slowly from the chest and softens the edges of winter. Music would follow. A lute, a flute, a voice rising above the crackle of the fire. The songs were simple, sometimes holy, sometimes foolish. They carried news from distant villages, tales of saints, of harvests, of kings. In the echo of the hall, melody and memory blurred. People sang because silence was too close. A feast could last hours, even days. In the great manors of England and France, it was a display of wealth and control. Every loaf, every haunch of meat, every cup of wine spoke of the Lord's ability to command abundance in a season of scarcity. Yet beyond the display there was gratitude. The silent relief of another year survived. The Middle Ages were never far from hunger. A failed crop, a cold spring, a sick animal could mean loss beyond repair. So when food was plentiful, it was shared with reverence. In monasteries, feasting took on another shape. The tables were long, the meals simple, the silence unbroken except for the reader's voice, a monk reciting scripture while others ate. Even in their restraint, the act of eating together bound them to the same purpose, endurance through the dark season. The feast was also a calendar, marking time not by the clock, but by the turning of faith. Christmas, Epiphany, Easter, the feast of a patron saint, each offered a pause, a gathering, a reason to kindle fire and remember abundance. For those who lived by the church's rhythm, every bite carried meaning. The fat goose at Christmas, the spiced bread at Easter, the fasting before Lent. All gestures in a long conversation between body and soul. Beyond the castles and cloisters in the villages, feasting was humbler, but no less sacred. A shared pot of stew, a crust of bread dipped in broth, a candle burning low on the table. Children sat close to the fire, their faces bright with heat. The smell of hay, of wool, of smoke and life filled the air. For a night, the world felt safe, even if only within the reach of that small flame. There was beauty in this simplicity. The medieval feast, stripped of grandeur, was a reminder of the fragile balance between survival and celebration. It was the warmth of bodies gathered close, the patience of hands breaking bread, the quiet gratitude for the food that existed at all. And as the night deepened and the candles burned low, the hall would fall into silence again. The bones and crumbs remained, small evidence of endurance. The fire sank into embers. The servants swept the floors, their movements slow, methodical. Somewhere outside, snow began to fall, soft and endless. In that quiet, one could almost hear the hum of centuries, the echo of countless winters, countless feasts, countless lives bound together by the simple act of sharing food. The table was never just wooden bread, it was memory. Tomorrow the cold would return. Fields would sleep beneath frost and hunger would wait just beyond the door. But for tonight, there was warmth. There was company. There was the taste of life, held gently in the palm of a hand. And in that warmth, fleeting, fragile, human, the Middle Ages found their peace. Every dish, every song. Every dish, every song, every slow dance is an act of endurance. We drift through seasons, Yule fires burning through the night, spring feasts after the long fast of Lent, the laughter of towns at harvest. Time in the Middle Ages was measured not by clocks but by hunger and relief. The rhythm of the year was written in what could be grown, hunted, or spared. In the depth of winter, when the world slept beneath ice, people gathered around the Yule fire. It was more than warmth, it was a promise, a spark held against the dark. Logs as thick as a man's arm were placed in the hearth, meant to last through the long night. Sparks rose like spirits, carrying prayers to a silent sky. Bread baked dense with grain, ale brewed strong and dark, a pig roasted whole, its scent filling the hall with memory and comfort. The Yule feast was a song against the void, not joy, but defiance, softened by flame. When the church bells rang for midnight mass, the hall would empty. Boots scuffed over frost, cloaks wrapped tight. The cold bit at fingers, but the air smelled of pine and smoke. Inside the chapel, candles burned low and steady. The words of prayer were slow, deliberate, ancient. Between them, silence, deep as the snow outside. For a moment, the world was still. Then came spring. The thaw of earth, the return of colour. The feasts after Lent were lighter, brighter, eggs, milk, greens. Lent had demanded restraint, no meat, no indulgence, only the plain fare of the faithful. But restraint sharpened the joy of return. Easter brought sweet bread and honey, lamb roasted with herbs, and wine poured like forgiveness. The feast was not only for the stomach, but for the soul, the renewal of both after 40 days of patience. In the countryside, the season marked a quieter celebration. Families carried benches outside, sitting beneath trees swollen with buds. A fiddle played somewhere near the fields. Children ran barefoot through the soft mud, chasing chickens and laughter. For a few weeks, the world felt generous again. Summer stretched long and slow. The days were filled with work, cutting hay, tending vines, watching the sky for storms. But even here, small feasts found their way into the rhythm of life. Weddings were timed with the sun's height, when travel was safe and fields forgiving. Tables were set outdoors, covered with linen if one could afford it. The air hummed with insects and song. Simple food, bread, cheese, berries, roasted birds. The joy was not loud but steady, like the pulse of the earth itself. By autumn, the tone changed. The harvest came, and with it, both relief and urgency. The barns filled with grain, the smokehouses with meat. Every full basket was a quiet victory. In towns, people danced, not to celebrate wealth, but survival. The harvest feast was a pause, a breath before winter returned. Apples, nuts, and cider filled the tables. The scent of earth and wood smoke mingled with laughter. Across the land, each feast, no matter how grand or humble, followed the same truth. Abundance was fleeting. The people of the Middle Ages understood the thin line between plenty and want. A bad season could turn joy into hunger, yet the rituals remained. To feast was to remember life's fragile balance. In the great manors, the hall echoed with ceremony. The Lord entered beneath banners of red and gold. Minstrels sang of valor and virtue. Servants carried dishes gilded with spice. Pike in sauce of almond and ginger, venison soaked in clove and wine, pastries shaped like crowns. The smell was intoxicating, yet beneath the splendor was a quiet fear, that even the mightiest depended on the turning of the soil, the mercy of rain. In the villages, the same truth unfolded in smaller gestures. A pot of stew thickened with barley, a loaf shared between neighbors. A jug of ale passed from one hand to another. Even laughter was rationed, yet never absent. The poor knew that joy, like food, had to be made from what was available. And always, music. The lute and the harp in the halls, the pipe and drum in the fields. Songs carried memory better than parchment. They told of kings and saints, but also of millers, shepherds and lovers. Their notes filled the long spaces between work and rest. When voices joined together, the hall itself seemed to breathe. Dancing, too, was part of survival, the slow turning of bodies, the shuffle of feet on stone or dirt, the clasp of rough hands. It was not elegance they sought, but connection, a rhythm that reminded them they were still alive, still moving with the earth. In the dim glow of torches, faces blurred into shadow, and time lost its edges. Night would end it all. Candles guttered, the air cooled. Somewhere a dog barked in the distance. The last cup was emptied, the last song finished. People stepped into the dark with full bellies and quiet hearts. The feast was over, but its warmth lingered. In the smoke that clung to their clothes, in the memory of touch, in the promise that they would gather again. Through centuries the pattern held, every dish, every song, every slow dance, all were small defenses against the vastness of time. Feasting was never excess, it was endurance dressed in light. And as the stars wheeled above cold rooftops and the fields fell silent again, Europe slept beneath its long winter sky. But somewhere, in a hall of stone or a cottage of wood, a single ember still glowed, a reminder that life, though fragile, could be tasted. One meal, one song, one moment at a time. The last ember. The sounds soften. Music, footsteps, voices, all blending into the rhythm of human gratitude. The night has grown deep. Shadows stretch longer across the walls, blurring the lines between stone and flame. The air inside the hall is thick with warmth and the fading scent of meat and spice. The feast has slowed to a hum, steady and low, like the breathing of the earth itself. Plates lie scattered, the edges of bread torn and forgotten. A few cups still glint with the last drops of ale. Wax from the candles has pooled onto the tables, small rivers of gold that have hardened into strange shapes. The servants move quietly now, collecting, sweeping, folding. They know this moment, the final hour when the noise of life folds gently into silence. The lords and ladies linger near the fire, speaking softly of hunts, of kin, of journeys yet to be taken. Their laughter is slower now, touched by weariness. The minstrel has lowered his lute. His fingers rest on the strings but do not play. The melody hangs unfinished in the smoky air, fading into memory.
At the edge of the hall, a child has fallen asleep beside the hearth. Her head rests on a folded cloak, her small hand still clutching a crust of bread. The firelight dances across her face, turning her breath into gold. Around her, the room breathes. Quiet, alive, ancient.
Outside, snow begins to fall again. It lands softly on the roof, on the narrow windows, on the bare branches that guard the walls. The sound of it, faint, steady, seeps through the cracks in the stone, a whisper against the last traces of song. Somewhere in the courtyard, a dog stirs, then settles once more. The world beyond the hall has gone still. The fields are pale under the moon, and the river moves beneath a skin of ice. Every farmhouse, every cottage, every monastery is wrapped in the same cold silence. The same story repeats: fire, food, fatigue, rest. Across the vastness of the land, the night holds its breath. Inside, the last log shifts in the hearth. Sparks leap upward, brief and bright, before vanishing into the dark. The heat is softer now, the kind that lulls the body towards sleep. One by one, voices fade, boots are removed, cloaks drawn tighter. Someone hums a final verse of a forgotten hymn, just enough to fill the space before quiet claims it all. There is peace in this ending. The feast, for all its noise and abundance, always leads here to stillness, to the slow return of simplicity, to the sound of wood settling, the sigh of a closing door, the hush of snow outside. The people of the Middle Ages did not feast for pleasure alone. They feasted to remember that warmth existed, that it could be made and shared, even in a world that was mostly cold. The candles burn lower, their flames trembling like tired hearts. Shadows move along the beams, stretching, folding, disappearing. A few voices whisper a prayer before sleep. Words half remembered, half hoped. Gratitude lingers in the air, quiet but full, like the scent of bread long after it has been eaten. Soon, the hall will darken completely. The fire will turn to ash. The night will swallow the echoes of song and laughter, but somewhere deep within the stone walls the warmth will remain, hidden, patient, waiting to be woken again when the next feast begins. And outside, the snow keeps falling, slow, endless, forgiving. It covers the fields, the roofs, the roads, softening the hard edges of the world. Tomorrow, footprints will mark it again, smoke will rise, and life will return to its careful rhythm. But for now, the land sleeps. The people sleep. The fire breathes its last ember into the dark. In that quiet, beneath the weight of centuries, beneath the soft fall of snow, something sacred endures. Not the feast, not the wealth, but the simple act of gathering, of warmth shared, of voices joined, the kind of peace that asks for nothing, and yet fills everything. Faustina the Younger, Empress of Rome. Faustina the Younger. The story closes where empire meets silence. Faustina the Younger is born into marble halls, daughter of an emperor, wife of a philosopher. Her life unfolds like a procession, calm, ceremonial, distant. She travels with armies, stands beside Marcus Aurelius, and becomes the quiet mother of an empire at war. Through rumor and loss, she remains composed. Rome, in her time, glows with the pale beauty of exhaustion. Columns rise against the sky like prayers carved in stone. The air smells of incense and iron, of temples, sweat, and empire. The world still bends toward Rome, though its heart beats slower now, heavy with the weight of centuries. Within that vast stillness, Faustina walks, her steps echoing softly on marble floors that have felt the tread of countless queens before her. Her childhood was made of ceremony. Silken curtains, gold-threaded robes, the sound of Latin recited by tutors whose eyes never met hers. Outside, soldiers marched. Inside, she learned the art of quiet, how to smile without joy, how to listen without reply. From her earliest years, she understood that stillness could be power. When she married Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, the empire spoke of harmony, wisdom, and grace united. Together they stood before the legions, symbols of endurance rather than triumph. He carried the stoic calm of one who believed all things must pass. She carried the stillness of one who had already seen them pass. Between them lay the quiet understanding of duty. His to the world, hers to the shape of it. She followed him to the frontiers, to the Danube, to the cold edges of empire where the Roman eagles trembled against the northern wind. In the tents of soldiers, she nursed the wounded, offered bread, whispered comfort. The soldiers called her Mater Castrorum, mother of the camps. She became a presence of gentleness in a world of armor and mud. Her hands, once accustomed to silk, now touched coarse wool and cold steel. Yet even there, beneath the grey sky, her composure did not falter. Letters from home spoke of plague, famine, unrest. Rome was a city of marble and fear. The streets that once sang with processions now echoed with silence. In the palaces, rumours grew, of disloyalty, of pride, of indulgence. Faustina's name was whispered with both reverence and suspicion. Some said she was the heart of virtue, others the ruin of it. But gossip could not touch her directly. She had mastered distance, the delicate art of being seen but never reached. When children were born, she became mother not only to them, but to a dynasty. Each birth a promise to history, each loss a quiet surrender to it. Her letters to Marcus, written from the far provinces, were measured, tender, never pleading. She spoke of the children's health, of the colour of the dawn, of the need for patience. Between the lines was affection, restrained and durable, the kind that survives not in words, but in endurance. Years turned slowly. The empire shifted, its borders trembling like a candle flame. Faustina aged with it, gracefully, invisibly. Her portraits show a face serene, eyes lowered, lips curved in something between kindness and restraint. Marble remembers her better than history does. In time, her life became legend, her image molded by both devotion and doubt. She died far from Rome in the cold lands of the Danube campaign. Some say she fell ill. Others whisper darker things: betrayal, despair, the weight of too much silence. Marcus mourned her as one mourns both a wife and an ideal. He wrote of virtue, of fate, of the stillness of the soul. In his meditations, her presence lingers without name, the quiet note beneath the philosophy of endurance. After her death, she was deified. Temples rose in her honor. Coins were struck with her face, serene, eternal, distant. The people prayed to her as a goddess of harmony, though she had lived as a woman of endurance. In marble reliefs, she rides toward the heavens, escorted by winged spirits. Her hand lifts in farewell, not of sorrow, but of release. And so the story closes, where empire meets silence, where philosophy meets loss. The feasts end, the soldiers sleep, the marble cools. Faustina remains not in triumph, but in composure. She is the breath between sentences, the pause between centuries. The wind moves through the ruins of her temples now. The columns stand like bones of a vanished body. Yet the stillness she carried endures, the calm of one who lived within power but was never consumed by it. History forgets the noise, it remembers the quiet. In that quiet, Faustina the Younger still walks, through the corridors of memory, through the dust of empire, serene, untouchable, eternal. The marble silence. Her presence softens the edges of conquest, her memory carved in stone. When she dies far from Rome, the emperor grieves and the empire pauses to remember her face. Temples rise, coins shimmer, the world moves on, but her story, like the echo of the Colosseum, never truly fades. It rests in marble, in silence, in sleep. The news of her death travels slowly across the empire. Messengers ride for days, their horses pale with frost. The roads wind through forests and ruins, through the long shadows of forgotten triumphs. When they finally reach Rome, the letters are already creased with distance, the ink smudged by the breath of winter. The city reads her name again, Faustina Augusta. The empress who followed armies, who smiled in snow, who carried grace into the campfire smoke of the frontiers. In the palace, Marcus Aurelius stands alone beside a quiet lamp. The light trembles on his face, catching the lines that war and wisdom have carved there. He reads the report once, twice, and then folds it away. There are no tears recorded. The emperor who wrote of endurance now lives its meaning. His grief is not loud, it is the silence between breaths. Outside, Rome continues. The forum hums with traders. The senators argue beneath painted ceilings. Children run past the fountains, chasing birds through the dust. The empire moves as it always has, vast, indifferent, alive. Yet beneath the marble calm something falters. For a moment, even the statues seem to lean closer, as if listening for her voice. Marcus decrees temples in her honor. One on the Via Sacra, near the heart of Rome, where incense once burned for gods long gone. Another in the provinces she once traveled, where soldiers still remember her gentleness. Stone by stone, her absence becomes architecture. Sculptors carve her likeness with eyes half closed, a faint smile curved like patience. To them, she is no longer woman, but ideal. Serenity given form. The coins that follow bear her name, her image, her quiet immortality. Silver and gold, they pass through countless hands, from generals to merchants, from mothers to beggars. On one side, the emperor's face, on the other, hers, two halves of an empire bound by time and by longing. The poor hold her image between their fingers, and for a moment even hardship seems softened by the thought of her grace. Yet no temple, no coin, no monument could hold her as she was, human, warm, fallible. The marble smooths away her voice, her laughter, her fatigue. It preserves only the stillness. History prefers serenity to truth. In the centuries that follow, she becomes more symbol than soul. The mother of the camps turns to myth, her flesh becomes story. Still the ruins remember. In the faint light of dawn, the temple walls catch a pale glow. Dust gathers in the corners like old prayers. A single column stands unbroken, its shadow falling across the ground where worshippers once knelt. The air smells faintly of age and rain. Somewhere nearby, a dove perches on a crumbling frieze and coos, soft, steady, eternal. The Colosseum watches from afar, its stones hollowed by time. Each arch holds echoes of cheers, of cries, of silence. Among those echoes, her memory lingers, not in the roar of conquest, but in the pause that follows it. The empire that once filled the world has grown thin as parchment. Its roads are cracked, its statues headless, its gods asleep. But her story drifts through the dust like incense, faint, unhurried, unforgotten. Scholars centuries later will argue her name. Some will call her faithful, others ambitious. A few will whisper of betrayal, of secret lovers, of imperial weariness. Yet none of it matters now. Time has no interest in accusation. It keeps only the shape of a life, the outline left where a hand once touched the world. In the quiet museums of later ages, her bust will rest beneath glass. Visitors will lean close, studying the smooth curve of her cheek, the faint suggestion of a smile. They will not know the cold of the Danube wind or the weight of an empire's expectation. They will not hear the faint murmur of soldiers calling her name at dusk. But the marble will remember. It always does. And so her story endures, not through words but through silence, the kind of silence that gathers in ancient rooms where the air itself feels old, the kind that carries a heartbeat long after the body is gone. In every shadowed temple, in every coin buried beneath the soil, she waits, patient as stone, eternal as memory. At last the empire fades, the temples crumble, the coins lose their shine, the marble weathers to dust. Yet even in ruin, something remains. The quiet grace of her endurance, the warmth she carried through the cold heart of history. Her presence still softens the edges of conquest. Her memory, though centuries removed, still hums beneath the weight of the world. Not as a goddess, nor as a queen, but as a woman who lived through empire, who bore its silence and gave it back as peace. The story closes as it began, in marble, in silence, in sleep. The wind moves softly through the ruins. The last light of day lingers on her face. And somewhere between shadow and stone, Faustina the Younger still breathes,